Let's talk a little Haason Reddick impact. So I want to hear from you first. Let's just discuss the trade overall. What are our feelings about it? The compensation, everything along those lines. What were your thoughts when you saw this come across the Twitterverse?
I was very excited when Haason Reddick was originally put up on the block, and he was said like, "Hey, if you want to go find a trade, go find a trade." I always thought the Jets should be in on that trade, but I always believed that the cost for Haason Reddick would be much, much higher than what we paid for him, right? And so I always thought it was an unrealistic thing to expect, right? It's like when I was yelled at, because I said in the middle of the season, I said the New York Jets should call San Francisco to see if they're willing to trade Brandon Ayuk in the middle of the season. Not in the middle of the season last year, but like in the offseason, like we should call. And everyone was like, that's crazy. That's not going to happen. I thought the same way those people were looking at me about Brandon Ayuk is how I thought the Haason Reddick thing was going to happen. It's like, dude, this would be awesome if Haason Reddick was on the Jets, because Haason Reddick, in my opinion, the chat's going to yell at me for this, is what I think Jets fans think Bryce Huff actually is. Like Haason Reddick is actually that, where Huff isn't. And we got better when we made that trade. And so, again, giving up a 2026 third-round pick, dude, that's so far in the future. We have no idea if this regime, if this coaching staff, if anybody's going to be here. That could be 2 Super Bowl championships away. So I love the trade. It made our team better in a lot more ways than people are anticipating.
Dude, it's crazy. I'm kind of there with you. And I'll be honest, Haason Reddick was not on my radar whatsoever because, like you mentioned, this trade wasn't, like, it didn't make any sense. There's, one, if we're not going to retain Bryce Huff, who is a younger version of who we hope Haason Reddick will eventually be, or who we hope Bryce Huff will eventually be, is turn into, Haason Reddick. And then just the contract. Like, at face value, it was 1 year, $16 million. And I guess it seems like the Eagles are going to eat the roster bonus, so it's really 1 year, $15 million. I still would have thought the trade would have been too high. Like, some teams should have offered more than a third-round pick 3 years from now. 3 drafts from now is absolutely insane, which has me thinking a little conspiratorial, tinfoil hat on the head. Do you think Joe Douglas was kind of like, hey, so remember that tampering charge you were about to get hit with for signing Bryce Huff so early in this process? Well, you can do us a solid by trading us your edge rusher for under market value. That's what it felt like to me. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But I'm happy we got him. Because like you said, I agree. I think this is who we hoped Huff would turn into. And we basically got the now version of who we were hoping he would be.
Yeah. I don't know about all that. I'm not all of... what you're saying, now that you've said it out loud, makes sense. That whole kind of, was there, all of that stuff that's going on. I don't necessarily tend to believe it, but I don't think players are going for what people expect, especially like on the edge, which it's weird because Haason Reddick should be a player that should have been sought after more. But you're starting to see players, or teams more specifically, get really weary of trading an asset and then having to pay for a player. That's the whole thing.
I guess when you have an Aaron Rodgers, you give up a bunch of assets for and a whole bunch of money, and then he winds up getting, snapping Achilles 4 plays in. It might make other teams a little hesitant to trade a big package of picks and dish out the big contract. Because, look, overall, it's a team sport, and, there's some premier positions, but it's absolutely valid to have concerns over the amount of financial commitment you want to have to any one given player at a time because of what it means if that player gets hurt. And the average career length in the NFL is 3.5 years. It's very hard. Yeah, pension comes in at 4 years. So there's statistically, your roster is flipping over every 3 years. And there's that little bit of like, the Sauces and the Garretts and like those guys that are a little more, the shelf life should be much longer. But by and large, the majority of players are out of the league within 4 years.
Yeah, you keep your roster every 3 years. Like what I think it's like 42, the average team, 42 of the players will be different. You keep about 11 starters every 3 years. So like from year 1 to year 4, about 11 of those guys on both sides of the ball are going to be on the team again, because most of those guys are either going to retire, go to another team, get traded away, get out of the league because they're just not good enough. The turnover is massive. That's why, like, again, you look at, it's why the draft is so important, right? It's 7 rounds. You're adding, theoretically, you should be adding 7 new players to your team every year. If those 7 players make it onto your team, that would mean 7 players need to leave. And then you got practice squad, and then you got undrafted free agents, and what happens if you trade up? What happens if you trade back and you collect a bunch of picks? Like,
we'll
it's
talk about the money too from a draft. The 7 players are the Jets draft pool this year is I think it's $10 million, and the actual like financial commitment that they'll have is $4.5 million. So like it is very, very advantageous to utilize your draft picks wisely.
Yeah, and you're starting to see teams, especially the better teams, they're willing to lose good players. Because the goal is, well, you just draft another one, or you have someone in the wings that's ready to take over. And you're starting to see that with the players, with the teams at the top that are relatively consistently there. The San Francisco 49ers. Now, they're going all in and they have superstars, but they're losing players every year on the offensive line, on the defensive line. They've got their superstars. Trent Williams isn't going anywhere. Bosa's not going anywhere. McCaffrey's not going anywhere. Debo's not going anywhere. Like, we get that. But, dude, they're having turnover in the quarterback room consistently. And so it's you're starting to see how the draft, it's always been very important. But I feel like a lot of GMs, especially when I grew up watching, was like, oh, we can just bring in a bunch of money. Or at least that's how the Jets operated. We can just bring in a bunch of free agents, and that's how we're going to build a team. And I've always thought that was fundamentally wrong.
What's up, guys? Matt O'Leary from Talkin' Jets. If you liked that video, please make sure to subscribe and follow for more New York Jets content.